Hola amigos, episode 10. We made it to double digits. Sweatshop Book Club, Becoming a Supple Leopard, subtitled The Ultimate Guide to Resolving Pain, Preventing Injury, and Optimizing Athletic Performance, Dr. Kelly Starrett with Glenn Cordoza. This book came out in 2013. That's when I got it. This book is actually a gift from my now wife. An aside, if you will. Her and my brother-in-law, who's now my brother-in-law, ended up at the CrossFit Games, and if you know anything about the CrossFit Games, there's usually a vendor's area. And when this book came out, of course, Kelly Starrett was making the rounds, selling the book, doing book signings. So this book is actually signed by him as well, with a note. But our relationship was funny because it was long distance. It was bi-coastal. I was from Maryland, living there at the time in 2013. She was in California, where we are now, before we got married. So Kelly wrote, Sean, too bad we are so far apart. You are the best boyfriend ever. Pain makes you beautiful. Exclamation point, Kelly Starrett. So this book is, for sentimental reasons, I guess, near and dear to my heart. That might be why I kept it off for so long, and now it's in episode 10. So why is this book important? This came out in the precipice of what CrossFit really was, even though it had been around before 2013. This book transformed a lot of boxes, if you will, and a lot of coaches, physios, clinicians, and their idea of basic mobilizations before and after. The concept of upstream, downstream from pain, usually for the most part, and this is what it says in the book also, if I have elbow pain, 98% of the time, it's not my elbow that's causing the problem, and this is not the root of the pain. Maybe it is downstream in the wrist, and maybe it is upstream in the shoulder. Most of the times it's in the shoulder, lacking internal or external rotation, but that also has to do with scapular motions. If this is a rib cage, this is scap, and how it glides. That's another aside. Episode 10, we got plenty of time for asides, yeah? The idea behind that is just trying to convey the message of usually pain is not in the place where it hurts. Usually the origin of pain is not where it hurts, rather it is either above or below that joint, and sometimes it could be a global problem as well. Got Phoebe snoring in the background, and she's actually sleepwalking while she's wagging her tail. She's always on the couch sleeping. So a couple things to note in this book. There are 4 sections. I don't know what the title of the 4 sections are, because I just usually, if I'm grabbing or referencing a book, it's a one-take Drake when I do this, and I say, hey, you're coming with me, little buddy, we're doing this. Chapter 1, the movement and mobility system. The gym is your lab, things of that nature is really good. Chapter 2, midline stabilization, the space between my eyes, on my nose, and between my feet, that would be my midline. That's huge in the CrossFit community. And I want to also sprinkle this in. This is global for strength and conditioning, like I said before, clinicians, physios as well. This book had a huge impact, and it still does. If you're seeing banded mobilizations online from someone, it's probably from here. There's a second edition to this as well, but this is the game changer, if you will. Chapter 3, one joint rule, brace spinal extension and flexion, global spinal extension and flexion. Chapter 4, laws of torque. The explanation of torque is really important and really fun, how he describes it on like a shirt, and how we look at how the tissue slides and glides. So that's in here as well. I lied, there's more than 4 chapters. Chapter 5 is movement hierarchy, category 1, 2, 3, and 4. Category 1, 2, and 3 movements, and then upright torso demands. This book goes through, as we go through categories, scaling up and down. There are many, many, many pictures in here. If you like pictures and you like seeing what's going on, that's great. If you're more audio-visual, then Kelly is the founder of MobilityWod, which is now transformed and transcended into what is the Ready State now. He made a video every day for a couple years in a row. So there's like 600, 700, 800, I don't know, maybe 1,000 plus. I'm sure there's more than 1,000 videos. The first video, of course, if you know, is a 10-minute squat test, which is hilarious to watch. Turkish get-ups are in here. The things we see that are mobilizing people throughout this, barbells, kettlebells, even barrels, bands that we talked about before, like rubber bands, but really, really big, of different intensities. Boxes, what boxes that you normally see in a CrossFit box. Lacrosse balls are good. The death peanut, I think is what he calls it, when he tapes together 2 lacrosse balls. to put on the erectors in between the spine. Diane Fu's in here. It has areas if we're going for the traps, things of that nature. So this is very, very in deep with how we're connecting movement, how we are a system of systems, nothing works independently of anything else. I'm thinking and I'm talking at the same time. Those are two different systems, but I'm also breathing and my heart's beating at the same time. Those are also cardiovascular, respiratory system. They're different. This area 11 is really important for your shins. I found a lot of help in that. And voodoo flossing, which came from taking an inner tube or a part of the tire from a bike and then wrapping around, including, but also applying compression through movement. If I'm wrapping my elbow and moving around, that occludes my forearm from getting any blood, right? That's what occlusion is. And then when I take the band off, I have a big rush of blood, which helps with a couple things. Number one, it helps clear waste, but also it helps deliver oxygen and things that would help clear out the tissue, right? So taking away waste, but also delivering nutrients is what I'm trying to say. So as we go through this, we see a lot of ideas with what we're looking for. Again, within the MobilityWod, check that out as well because that's still up on YouTube. But the point where I started really enjoying this when we were talking about sliding surfaces, if you look at the hand and you kind of take your fingers and push them together so that there's tension in the muscles and you slide around, there's a little bit of tension, you relax, there's a lot more slack and slide and glide within the tissue. We want the tissue to be healthy and move correctly. I tore my labrum after college doing stupid stuff like dunking basketballs and doing broad jumps after pitching or before lifting. And I didn't know it was torn for a long time, but my long toss went from 340-ish, 330 to 340 feet to 215 feet, maybe on a good day. And I was really bound up. I tore the front of my labrum, the anterior portion, which caused me to sublux in my shoulder, which meant that my humerus didn't really have a place to stay in the shoulder socket, so it would come out all the time. And I was throwing and I was still lifting. And I had a couple pro workouts I was going to that I was really trying to get into. And when Katie gave me this book, I started applying some things for shoulders, and I actually unimpinged my shoulder. My collarbone was out of place also. It was kind of higher. I could put fingers behind the collarbone. So not only did I sublux my shoulder, doing weird jumps and stuff, but also my collarbone was out of place. I didn't know. This really helped get everything in place. This helped my mobility in conjunction with a good throwing program, lifting, mobility here, and then a weighted ball program that I designed that I still use for some people as well. But I went from throwing high 80s, touching 90 every once in a while, maybe touching a little bit lower 90s in a healthy state, to subluxing my shoulder, tearing my labrum completely through, not getting it fixed also, and going and throwing 81 and 82 in a bullpen before leaving to go to Florida, and then before leaving to go to St. Louis, which was a little bit scary. I ended up touching 87, 88, sitting on 87, touching 88 rather, in one of the workouts. And again, this is a third aside, within the video, but the idea was that joint centration is super important. Found that out in here. How we sync everything up, how we are a system of systems, how tension and torque works. And I applied that directly from reading this multiple times over. So this is something I still reference. This is something that has changed multiple games over multiple realms, over multiple years, and still does so. So this is the staple. I know for the last 10 episodes, I'm like, you should get this book, you should get this book. Triphasic, super important if you're a strength and conditioning coach. This would be important if you're actually dealing in a setting with athletes who you can work with one-on-one that have issues beforehand, if they're walking a little bit funny, if they're a little bit overextended, if there's some issues there. If you can apply, if you have the setting to apply things one-on-one or within a small group, this would be fantastic to have a couple more tools within your toolbox, and helping out with joint centration, and then rib cage, facilitating that position of apposition, so that the rib cage and the pelvis are lined up, and we can actually create a lot of torque throughout the midsection when we're lifting weights. We're more fluid, obviously, when we're running and doing more things dynamic when we're not loaded. But if we have good apposition between the pelvic floor and the rib cage, life is good. This can help teach that as well. So soft tissue work after, and this is really good. Like I mentioned before, triphasic would be a staple. This is also a staple. Charlie Francis is pretty good, but I wouldn't have it up there in terms of the two aforementioned books. And I mentioned American Football Preparation by Buddy Morris. I'm mentioning a lot of books. Relentless. This is, I would put above that in terms of necessity if you have the right environment and the right availability with everything. So if everyone in your system is doing the same lifts and doing the same exercises and doing the same thing, you shouldn't read this book. You should look in the mirror instead, probably. But if you have the availability to generalize stuff, but also add in specific stimuli for individual athletes that adapt to, then this would be good. So take that as you will. Ciao.